It's a week since the Beatles, or really Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, released the old John Lennon song demo, and I'm just thinking back on it now because I didn't really talk about the song in my first video, but I think it's a really good song on its own merit. You know what I mean? I think just on its own, not taking any meaning from it or anything, it's a really good song, and it is quite ironic because. Look, it was one of John Lennon's demos from around about 1977. He could have put it on Double Fantasy or Milk and Honey, but he didn't. But I think it's probably better than any of the songs on that, you know. In fact, I think the three that I've made out of John Lennon demos that Yoko Ono gave them in 1994 or something, I think probably all of them are better than Double Fantasy or... I've only heard Double Fantasy once, but I know Starting Over and Women and Watching the Wheels Go Round, and the ones from Milk and Honey, which wasn't a finished album, it was sort of stuff he'd done in the studio, but that would have been his next album. Some of that was good. Nobody... Days Like These, stuff like that. But I think actually those three that the Beatles have done, or the Threetles as they would be called, and now just the Ringo and Paul, probably better than all the songs. Well, I've not heard all of Milk and Honey. So on that merit, I thought it's a really good. I've listened to it about 10 times now. Is that enough for you? But I thought the video was pretty rubbish, but I liked it, you know, because most videos are garbage anyway. They're sort of arty, just total nonsense, you know. But at least this was just video of the four of them, even though none of them were together. I mean, Paul and Ringo weren't even in the same room and they're alive, you know. So they just went for a comical thing, you know, because they went for the same sort of video images of John and George. I mean, I don't think George was wearing a sensible clothing, and it was, I think he had two sorts of clothing. Both of them were sort of fancy dress, you know, Sergeant Pepper or Magical Mystery or something. Then John was getting a bit of an acoustic guitar. So the video was pretty rubbish, but I would rather have that, where it's like a school video programme, you know, it's something that you'd give uni students, or, you know, for media studies or something, because at least they had the four of them in it almost all the time rather than just artsy stuff, you know, because like the Rolling Stones just released a video and they weren't even in it, you know. I think we were to imagine they were in their late 20s or something, you know. It was just billboards and stuff, you know. And that's the Rolling Stones album. I listened to that once anyway, but there's just nothing, no connection really, you know. I mean, it's pretty good from what I heard, but I don't really want to hear it again or anything, you know. But this Beatles one, or you could call it John's demo plus others, yeah, that was really good. And then they took that other verse out, which I think's a pity because they call it a bridge, I think they call it, because it was pretty good. I know, and at the end he went wah 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 wah, because he didn't realise he was going to end up being on a single 43 years after his death. You know, he was playing his piano in the house, watching telly, back in 77. And then by then he hadn't released an album for 2 or 3 years, you know. He'd really given up in the industry, but I think he would have come back in a big way. But yeah, I mean, on its own, it's really good. And that bridge, because that changes the meaning. I mean, the song's either about Yoko, and some have said it may be about May Pang, was it? Who was his sort of mistress. Because apparently he was seeing her right up to his death, you know, So, 79, because she's doing her rounds at the moment. This is just coincidence. Somebody's made a movie about her, and I think it was them that approached her, you know, to give her, quote, truth. So there's just a sort of movie came out about her, because she wasn't interested, you know, in that sort of stuff. But now she's been doing some of the radio programmes and the Beatles fan club things or whatever on YouTube and that. It's just been really interesting, but I think she was seeing John right up to the end. I think it was a sort of a situation where, you know, he had her phone number. He could call on request or whatever if she was in town or whatever. Well, that's my impression I got. I could be totally wrong. So some have said it might be a bit her, but I don't think so. It's probably a bit Yoko, you know, because he always sort of used her as a sort of frame for these sort of songs. Like somebody was saying, he does a lot of bittersweet songs and that, but so that verse sort of wouldn't have fitted with the idea that he was singing to Paul or the Beatles or anything like that, singing about the Beatles, you know, because I think that's what you're sort to think, you're meant to think. I mean, it's a good job that they've done of it, you know, it's Paul's done most of it. But then that's what happened with the Beatles as well. I mean, Yesterday was just Paul and George Martin, you know, the others weren't involved. I think that's the first song where the rest of them weren't involved, or all of them, you know, just one of them. And then they used to do that all the time after that, you know, in Sgt. Pepper's, or I don't know about Sgt. Pepper, but the White Album and the others. I mean, Eric Clapton was on something, you know, for George. So he done the guitar solo, Eric Clapton, on that. Yeah, so I went on with the Beatles like that all the time, but I think John would be surprised what he's doing with my song 43 years later or whatever. But looking at the video, the idea is made to sort of think that he's talking about the Beatles or Paul, you know, and there's one bit where John's looking at the sunset and Paul's looking our way. I think they're both singing I Love You or something. I don't know. Because I listened to Paul's, he just brought a book out about a year ago about his songs, and at some point he was going, F you, John, F you. And he was talking about, after they broke up, the things John said or whatever. Well, first of all, it started off, he was talking about John doing his peace stuff, which he thought it was a bit naff or something. John did after a while either as well. He said after him and Yoko didn't feel right about it. But I thought John chucked all that because it looked like he wasn't going to get a green card for America, you know, because Nixon, I think, refused. But then he managed to get one from Ford, I think, or whatever. But whatever, I thought it was quite good, the stuff he done, you know, the sit-in and all that, or the bed sitting on his honeymoon or whatever. Yeah, so we're supposed to think it's maybe a thing about the Beatles, you know, but I don't mind anyway. It's nice enough words, I don't really care. But as I say, I think the three of those are probably better than anything in Double Fantasy or Thingme. So now I'll get on to my critique of the Thingme. You see, first of all, they come in. I mean, people are saying it's too compressed, and I can sort of see that, you know, it's got that sort of Jeff Lynne feel, even though he wasn't involved with it. Because Jeff Lynne, from ELO, he makes big sounds, he doubles instruments, you know. If you've got a bass track, he'll double it, or quadruple it, maybe even. Apparently, from what I saw from his the BBC documentary about him about 10 years ago. But Jeff wasn't involved this time, although some of the stuff from '94 was used, so, you know, George's guitar and that. But it sounded too compressed to me still, which I think is what adverts do, you know. That's why maybe if you fall asleep when you're watching something on TV and then the adverts come on and they sound really loud, they're not legally allowed to put them up, so what they do is compress it. And I think it's got that sort of feel as well, you know. It's a bit too compressed, it's not natural. And funny enough, George was still working with Jeff Lynne up to his death with his new album, Brainwashed and that. And he said, no more reverb and that sort of stuff. We just want all natural. Which is a bit funny because he used that sort of the Wall of Sound guy for his first album, All Things Must Pass, which is a good sounding album. But anyway, Jeff used reverb and all that after he died, and I saw a thing about him. Jeff done a thing, he says, George, I'm sorry for using reverb and all that, but I wanted to make it the best it could be, you know. So George is probably, if he came back, I told you not to put reverb on it, Jeff. You know, he couldn't even obey George's last request or whatever, you know. So yeah, the song sounds a bit, you know, too professional now. It was Giles Martin that produced it, really, and Paul McCartney. He's apparently the lead producer or whatever. Yeah, apparently Giles is George's son, George Martin's son, and he's doing the rounds in the interviews at the moment, and he's saying that he first got involved in May this year. Paul told him about it because, but the strings that were involved in that, they weren't told that it was a Beatles thing they were involved in, but that was apparently they were involved 18 months ago. So the strings were put down about 18 months ago. So it's been a long thing coming, you know. And yeah, so it's too compressed now. It would be better if it was a bit more natural, a bit more raw or whatever, you know, I think, anyway. But I don't really care, you know. And I was just thinking maybe they could have done 2 or 3 versions, you know. They could have done maybe one more raw, maybe even without strings. And maybe they could have done another one with that bridge. Because the bridge is actually good, because it's the only bit where John really goes, floats about. You know, it's the only bit that you would maybe get a chord wrong if you were just trying to work it out. You know, the rest of it's pretty basic, although it's nice basic. Because I think one of the nicest songs ever is Silent Night, which is a pretty basic song. Silent Night's a really great song, whereas Happy Birthday to You is a terrible song. And that's a basic song as well, you know. So it's just your luck, you know, but John was quite good at that, you know, because Imagine was quite a plodding, simple song, you know, but it's quite nice, you know. I don't really want to hear Imagine, but it's nice when you hear it, you know. And the words were pretty good as well. Yeah, because I think John had a better sort of feel for just, I don't know, the human brain or whatever, more than Paul, although Paul can do real classics, or he can do terrible ones as well, you know. Well, not terrible, but yeah. Like Two of Us, I don't really like that one, even though it's quite a nice, simple song. Yeah, but yeah, that Maxwell's Silver Hammer, obviously. Yeah, so the song was thing, and then when it comes in, I thought Ringo's drum was just slightly too loud. I'm just being pernickety really, you know. Yeah, and I said I thought at the end they should have put in John's guitar bit from In the End by the Beatles on Abbey Road. You know, maybe just mixed it in the end, because he liked Chuck Berry, and his end bit was you might have been able to put that in there. You might have had to change key or something, you know. But yeah, but it was nice because yeah, they put old Beatles stuff in. You put where the Beatles were the 3 or 4 of them were singing the background to Eleanor Rigby and that nice one from Abbey Road. Because that was another funny thing about the Beatles. They were they done barbershop quartets, or usually triplets. You know, you'd think that'd be naff, but it was really good, you know. So the Beatles, they were doing all these sort of creative things to sort of make songs peak, you know, because songs can sort of fade off, but then you can make them peak, maybe with a lick, you know, because I really like George's guitar licks, I think, you know, and I heard these guitar licks now in the song. They come in the second verse or something, and they're really nice. I really like them. And I wonder why George didn't want to do the song. Personally, I think he didn't like it, or he get fed up or something. I don't think it was because of the quality or it. It might have been, though. We don't really know. People say we'll never know, but Paul knows, you know. So, and Ringo, presumably. So, could somebody ask them, please, you know, before they're not around? Because, like, Paul told us in the Jeff Lynne documentary 10 years ago that George said it's a bit crap, you know, but nobody seems to have asked him to elaborate. Was he meaning because of the quality? You know, because apparently it had a buzz in it, and it had the piano and the TV, apparently. Yeah, but yeah, so the song starts. I think Ringo's drums were just a bit too loud. I think it could have been a bit more flashy, because Ringo says he thinks his favourite ever drum track for the Beatles was Rain, which is ironic because I think he overdone it on that one. I thought he went on. He went a bit too crazy, even though it was nice. It wasn't that nice. you know. But usually I'm a Ringo fan now, you know. I like his, because he's not a practicing drummer or anything like that. He just does what he wants, and there's a lot of cymbals and hi-hat and that, I think. I don't know what I'm talking about, just bear with me. So then the song comes in, and then Paul comes in, and straight away, that second bar of his bass, he does that do, and that's like a bass guitarist no, I would say, because that's the sort of thing a bass guitarist can't play, really, does, to be a bit adventurous, you know. So I'm surprised he'd done that. I would have just kept it straight for that first 2 bars of the bass. But then in the 4th bar, he done a fancy thing which was really nice. You know, I don't know what he was doing, but it was really nice. And most of it, he was really good, because he's an outstanding bass player, you know, because I suppose he's really just a lead guitarist, really. But I thought his bass was good. Maybe it could have been even better, I don't know. I saw him playing the Hofner, you know, that's the one he started with in 1962, which is really a sort of violin bass, really, but, you know, then he went on to a Rickenbacker, but he went back to the Hofner, probably sentimentality and that, you know, because it's not a very good sounding bass. Apparently it gets out of tune easily and that, but, you know, a Rickenbacker's a really good sounding one, but probably in the mix you can do a lot of stuff to anything now to make it sound good. But I noticed he was playing with his thumb, you know, it looked to me anyway, with his right hand. No, wait a minute, he plays the other way around. So his strumming hand he was playing with his left hand, and he was using his thumb, which you don't really see anybody playing the bass with their thumb. I suppose you don't really need it in the studio, you know, because they can do anything in the mix. You know, because usually most of the traditional things you use 2 fingers or a plectrum. So that was just interesting, you know, but I thought his bass was really good. I mean, in a lot of Beatles songs, well, they're all really good, you know, that's what's so good about them in the mix. I mean, the only other band I can really think like that is the Stone Roses, which was the last band that I really liked. After that, I sort of gave up, you know, following the band or whatever. You know, they were just incredible, all 4 of them, especially the drummer, but all of them, really. Just, and that's what the Beatles were like as well. If you take one out, you know, a lot of bands you can take people out and they're just the same, but although I don't really feel the Rolling Stones are, you know, because they've got this, that new guy for the drums, Steve or whatever, but Charlie was he was a jazz drummer, and he was a bit, Charlie Watts, he was a bit eclectic or whatever, and that was sort of good as well. Sometimes he'd miss beats out and stuff, and it was just interesting. I think the Rolling Stones have lost that a wee bit. And their new album, I mean, it was good, but I don't want to hear it again, really, you know. It just didn't. I mean, that Angry one was made, I suppose, like be like Start Me Up, but Start Me Up's a classic, you know, and it just doesn't. Anyway, back onto the Beatles, yeah. So, but overall, it's a good song. It was good to hear George, you know, because I like all the Beatles. They're all comedians. I mean, I would have said to them, "Yous have missed your life calling. You should have been comedians, but yous have missed it now." That's what I would say to them if I could speak to them, you know, because listening to any of them's absolutely outstanding, you know, on their own. I mean, I've listened to quite a few interviews now on YouTube and that, you know, and George even, he was just so wise and that. But he was a bit cranky, George, you know, so I can see how him and Paul had a bit of thing there, you know, because Paul's sort of a teacher-like, you know, a bit. And Paul actually said in an interview recently for Australia that he took a look at the Get Back's video stuff to see if he was bossy and that, and he didn't think he came across, and it was just interesting that he was watching it the same way that the rest of us were watching, you know, because he didn't seem that bossy, but just sometimes you can, you know, because a lot of the Beatles stuff, he was the sort of person, you know, taking over and that. Not taking over, it was mostly his projects and stuff, you know, but somebody had to do it, you know what I mean? I don't think the other three would have done anything after Revolver, maybe. But yeah, so George, I can see he's a bit cranky, and the first thing I think about George is he's a chronic womanizer. You know what I mean? Because even in that Get Back thing, it was January the 2nd or something. They started the thing, the footage, and he'd just been chucked out by his wife on that day because she'd caught him with another woman or something, or he'd been having an affair, you know. So that's how that Get Back thing started for him. And I noticed that I think he brought some of the Hare Krishna chanters along with him, because they were sort of sitting at the doorway or something. I think George brought them along, sort of. So it wasn't just John that brought somebody else along, you know, because he brought Yoko. George brought his Hare Krishna things. Because, you know, you're meant to think of George, Hare Krishna and all that. But I think it was a chronic womanizer, you know, because he actually even had an affair with Ringo's wife, Maureen. But they knew Maureen from Liverpool, you know, because she was part of that crowd. And I think Paul even went out with her when they were in Liverpool. But then Ringo married her later. But when Ringo's commented about it, he said that by then the marriage was over or something. But I heard something that apparently even after the affair started, that Ringo and Maureen went over to George's house for Christmas or something. I don't know, but the whole thing. So to me, it's a bit bizarre seeing George talking about peace and love and all that, Hare Krishna, and being free from all the world's temptations and all that. I've heard him talk about that sort of stuff, you know, and I'm thinking, what on earth are you talking about or whatever, you know. But yeah, and the other thing I think it's ironic that George is the one that don't think of worldly possessions and all that, but he's the one that wrote Taxman. Yeah, Taxman is an outstanding song. It's the one that I think of as starting my branch of music, you know, like the Jam and, well, the Jam did Start as well, didn't they? But I mean, I thought Start was an improvement, probably. But, I mean, Paul has said that it was exactly like Start, you know, but it's not really, but it is enough, probably. If George wanted to sue him, he probably would, which is ironic because George gets sued for My Sweet Lord. But yeah, Taxman, you know, that was sort of maybe the first Beatles non-love story song, you know. What was that? Was that in Revolver, I think? Yeah, and it was a good riff and all that. So it is ironic that I think of George, I think of Taxman and womanising, whereas what you're meant to think of is peace and love and nothing to do with hedonism or anything, you know what I mean? So it's, I mean, even that tour in '92, I think he took a mistress with him. And Olivia said in his documentary about George that you just had to get used to put up with it, you know. Yeah, and in that '92 tour, I think Eric Clapton had that baby with an Italian model, the one that he lost that fell out a window in New York when they were 3 or something. Connor, I think his name was. And apparently I think that's who George took along in his '92 tour of Japan. And Eric Clapton as well. Eric was his lead guitarist. But I presume Eric wasn't bothered by then. Well, he'd already left years ago, I think, or, well, 5 years or something. Because it wasn't that late. Because they only lost Connor in 1990 or something, you know. That's the one he wrote Tears of Heaven for. So there was all this sort of weird stuff going on, you know, but that's what I think of George foremost. Although I enjoy listening to him all the time, I don't find him very wise. I find them all very wise, you know. Even Ringo. Well, I've a cheek to say even. Ringo's. Yeah. Because I like George's guitar playing from what I've heard. I don't know about after he left the Beatles, but his rhythm stuff or his lead, I really like him, you know, in that guitar battle and in the song In the End, in the Beatles medley in Abbey Road. I mean, him and Paul were obviously the lead guitarist guys because the two of them were great. John wasn't so good, but he was still interesting, you know, he picked interesting licks, but he wasn't doing the same sort of stuff And John said that. He said that during the Beatles that George and Paul used to go in other group sessions, you know, and studio sessions like the Kinks or whatever. But John never done that because he felt, well, what can I contribute? Because he didn't think he was good enough on the guitar or the piano or whatever, you know, for jamming and stuff. Yeah, sort of like George's stuff that he plays, but John actually said to George that he told George that he preferred his own lead stuff, you know, which is fair enough, you know, because John liked that sort of Chuck Berry rhythm stuff, and I can understand that, you know, that to me that is probably the basis of the sort of rock stuff that I probably like as well, even though I like George's and Paul's stuff, you know, really Chuck Berry might have been, he was one of the founders of rock and roll music, you know, him and Little Richard and the guy on the piano and Elvis, you know, but probably the other Little Richards and that were the ones that sort of get the energy, you know. What am I talking about anyway? Yeah, and I saw that guitar battle from In the End, where all three of them played the lead. Some young guy from America done a video of it on YouTube. It's really worth looking out just to see it, you know. Yeah, it's really good. And like I say, Paul and George were doing really good high key stuff, but John was down in the low stuff, doing sort of riffs. And apparently, from what I heard anyway, John asked to be last, so because he wanted to do that last bit. So I think they should have tried to put that in the song, you know. They should have tried to put it in now and then, maybe at the end. So maybe they could have put out 3 versions or something, you know. Like I say, somebody on YouTube also done an early 60s version of Now and Then, and that was really good as well. The guy done a really good video of it as well. A young American guy. His YouTube name ends with numbers, but I can't remember. 362 or something. Yeah. And then on YouTube, somebody done an AI, including the bridge of John's song, and I thought it was really good. They're both just as good, really, though. So I would need to hear them again and again before I could decide. Maybe I wouldn't even decide, you know. So really, yeah. So it's a good song overall, you know, and it's worth listening to that version with the bridge in it. You know, they used the AI, so it sounds like the Beatles. I think John's voice sounds good on it, you know. It still sounds a bit out. Maybe it's because, you know, he was playing in his house, so he would probably just almost be mumbling, you know. It wasn't as if he was trying to sing his heart out, you know, because he didn't know he was going to be on a record 43 years later. But I'm sure he didn't have to bother about the neighbours, although you can't tell, you know, even in somewhere like the Dakota in New York. And Yoko just sold up the Dakota flat recently, so they had it for like 43 years, but more than that actually, 50 odd. But I don't think she's very well at the moment, although I follow her Twitter and she still posts quite a lot. Well, if it's her, I don't know who it is, you know, really. But I mean, she's 90 now, you know. And I've always liked Yoko for what I know, so I don't know about any of the stuff. But apparently the 4 demo tapes, it was George that was actually talking to her in '94 over the phone, and she said, I've got 4 tracks. But he had a lot of demos, other demo stuff, but now you can't put George on them, so I guess they won't work on them, you know, because they can't put George on them now. But the song's very satisfactory to me, really, you know. It's probably better than, well, anything I can think of that Paul's done in quite a few years, decades, you know. I think the last song I liked from Paul was No More Lonely Nights, and he had David Gilmour on that, you know, playing the guitar in the end. I think that's a really nice song. It's one that I still think of, you know. But he had some great songs as a solo artist. Maybe I'm Amazed and Band on the Run, which is a total classic, I think. And Live and Let Die, which he still does, of course, on his. He's doing his tours at the moment. He's in Australia, and he does 3-hour sets, you know. Voice totally shot to pieces, and he was very quiet on the Now and Then, and I think that was the best thing to do, you know, because even his talking voice is gone now, you know. And it's weird because Ringo sounds like a 30-year-old, you know. Ringo's got the strength of Pavarotti, maybe not the tone, but because Ringo still brings out a lot of songs. He brings out EPs now with his buddies, like the guy from Toto, but they're take it or leave it songs, really, you know. You hear once and they're alright, but you don't want to hear them again, you know. But he brings out EPs all the time now, maybe even twice a year or something. And he's got his all-star band, like the guy from Toto and the guy from Men at Work, who I think was born in Scotland, the lead singer. And they do stuff like Ringo lets them sing their own famous hits. You know, they had Graham Goldman from 10cc. I saw him singing Dreadlock Holiday. But I don't think I would like that if I was a Ringo fan, you know, or Beatles fan, you know. Maybe once, but I don't really want to. And some guy who plays the keyboard had done a Dr. Frankenstein song or something. I think it was a hit in America. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if it's number one or does anybody care or whatever, but last I looked I had about 6 million views on YouTube, but that was just the audio though. But I think the video's got about 21 million or something. As I say, the video, it was alright. It was like a media studies thing. I wonder if it's young people that came up with the concept or something. I know it was Peter Jackson that oversaw it and that, but it was just a bit silly, you know. It had that school student feel to it, you know. It was almost like a family party or something. And then it showed all four of them, but like even Ringo and Paul weren't even in the same room, you know. And I can't even remember what Ringo was wearing, but yeah, it was still great and all that. And the song, as I say, I think it's a good song and they've done a good mix of it. I liked the way it finished. I thought John's singing was a bit trebly. I don't know if anything could be done with that. I'm just being pedantic now though, you know, just to be interesting, to keep this going and that. But I think that's all I've got to say about it, you know. I did wonder a bit. I'm glad I heard George's guitar playing. I don't know about strings and that. I mean, the strings were nice, but it'd be interesting to hear it without the strings. I know they've done a good job and they done sort of staccato things like they did in Eleanor Rigby and that, but I don't know. I would like to hear it without the strings just to see. That was Paul's idea. Yeah. So. Yeah, and I mean, Paul was always having affairs when he was with Jane Asher and that, I think. But once he met Linda, I think he hardly missed a night with her. The only time they were apart was when he was in jail in Japan, I think, in 1980, when he took some cannabis with him to Japan for their tour. I think apart from that, he maybe only missed one night with Linda, you know. So that's amazing, really. Well, and I'm sure he's been the same with his two wives since then. And then Ringo met that lady on the Caveman movie. I think she was in the Dukes of Hazzard, was she, or something? Yeah, he's been with her since about 81 or 1980 or something. Well, George got married when he was 73 for the second time, but I don't think we can see the same about loyalty to Thingy, even though they stayed together until his death. Yeah. There is talk of another song that I don't know if all four of them played in it, you know, because you would need George to be there from the 95 sessions or whatever. But there is talk of another song, but I don't know. I think that's it really, but they'll probably do other things, you know, because AI's... I've listened to some of the Beatles stuff in AI. there's stuff that's getting there. You know, it's like 80% good or 85% good, but it's still a bit thing me. But now they're going to have people doing songs that they never ever sang, you know, that sort of thing. Like Paul McCartney singing My Way and stuff like that, you know, because of the AI. But yeah, well, I hope that's interesting to you. I've tried my best, that's all I can do. Alright, goodbye. And as I say, I was like a Beatles, I was like year zero when punk came along, Sex Pistols and that, so I'd hardly knew anything about the Beatles apart from their singles. So I've picked all this up over the last 5 years, you know, like songs like Hey Bulldog, which I'd never heard till like 3 years ago, and I'm like, this is outstanding, you know. And then the video for that's fantastic as well, and that was another good one because it was footage of them in the studio, although they aren't actually singing that song in that video footage. I think it's Lady Madonna or something that they're singing, I don't know, but, or have I got that wrong? I don't know. But yeah, just an outstanding group and all that, you know, they're like the Shakespeare of popular music. Okay. I mean, Peter Jackson done Lord of the Rings, and all this has happened because he's got that machine learning thing that can strip voices away from other sounds and that, and he done it for the Get Back thing, which was excellent. I recommend try to hear the Twickenham stations on YouTube, which are about 16 hours long, and it's the Beatles just rehearsing for that album, Let It Be. And what did they call it? They call it after the cassette recorder that they were using. Was it a Niagara cassette or something? But it's just so interesting. You can hear it on YouTube. I don't think there's any video. It's just audio, but you can hear them doing the same songs again and again, you know. And that's where they got the Get Back stuff from as well. Yeah, so Peter Jackson had that machine learning, and he's a big Beatles fan, and he asked Paul, could he do Get Back? Then they pitched it to Disney or whatever. But he seems a bit eccentric, you know, so I think that's how that video turned out, eccentric. That's the guy who done Lord of the Rings. Because I heard him in a YouTube fan thing, where it was 4 hours he was talking, but it was really just him talking and talking and talking, and he went on and on and on and on. It was a bit boring, really, you know, but maybe what I'm doing here, actually, you know, just but that was 4 hours. I don't think I could even do 4 hours here. But you could listen to that as well, but I mean, it is fascinating, although that's to do with Get Back, really. But he's got that machine learning stuff, and because he's a big Beatles fan, he was willing to do all that, and I guess he got John's voice right for this, you know, because it sounds really good. People who are watching that mini documentary the night before, they must have been dying to hear John's voice, but I'd heard the demo anyway, so I knew what the demo was like. So I was waiting for the voice to come along, you know, and it was quite good, you know, and it was crystal clear. But for the other people watching, they wouldn't have heard the song before either, you know, so it was good the way they done that, you know, because they done that on the Wednesday, and then they brought the song out in audio on the Thursday, then they brought the video out on the Friday. Yeah, it was pretty good. And then I've heard Love Me Do, which is it the B-side or the double A side or whatever, you know, because that was the first song. I thought it was Paul McCartney just wrote that, but I mean, John seems to say it was, although he helped a bit. He said he helped with the bridge. Quite often, it's as if he seemed to do that with Paul's songs, sort of come up with a bridge or something. Or, yeah, that was the first song they done. It's funny hearing that because you can hear how nervous Paul was. That was 1962. It's September 62. They done 3 copies of it. The first one with Ringo around about August, and Ringo had just joined the band then, because George Martin wasn't happy with Pete Best's drumming. He said, we'll need to get somebody else in. And they got Ringo from Thing Me and the Hurricanes, that Liverpool band, because they knew Ringo from Hamburg and that, and Liverpool. And then Paul had only been playing the bass about 4 months when he done Love Me Do, but I don't think it's that hard to go from the guitar to bass, you know. Because they had another bass player that was John's friend from art school, college or whatever. His name's Stuart something. But apparently he wasn't very good. And when they were in Hamburg and that, he met some girl and he just chucked it to stay with her. She was an art student as well. I think she was a friend of that guy, Klaus, who started hanging about with the Beatles, and he done the artwork for Revolver, and he played bass for John, for Imagine and stuff like that, or the one before that, and yeah. But that Stuart died of a brain hemorrhage about a year later, 1963 or something, and they didn't know. The Beatles didn't know until they came back over in 63 or something, and that his girlfriend met them at the airport, and they asked, where's Stuart? And she told them he'd died, and John went down on his knees in the airport, you know, because that was his friend. Although I don't know how he didn't know, you know, but, well, maybe it was such a crazy year for them and all that, you know, the Beatles. Yeah, that was his friends from art school or college or whatever. Because apparently the first time they done some sort of rehearsal or thing to try and get signed or something. I think the bass player played with his back towards whoever was listening, the critique or whatever, I don't know. I could be making stuff up now, guys. This is just the stuff I've been listening to on YouTube and that, you know. Yeah, another thing about the song I meant to say, this at the start actually, it was my main point. The way the song goes is boom, 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 something like that. But I would have went boom, 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 boom. I'll need to listen to it again actually, you know. Actually, they might be doing what I suggested, boom, 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 or something like that. Now that I'm listening closer, I don't know. First it sounded to me like boom, 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 boom or something, you know? Know what I'm saying? Another thing, I'm probably talking total nonsense, but those first two verses, I would have probably repeated them and then done that end bit, or whatever he's saying, and then everybody into the chorus, I don't know. But then that might have made it too long. It doesn't, it's funny because it's like 4.5 minutes or something, but it doesn't feel that long, the song, you know. Apparently it was at 80 beats per minute and Paul put it up to 88. I mean, when you talk about it, it wasn't even a demo, it was like you sitting strumming your guitar and you know, taping yourself, but not thinking anybody was going to ever hear it or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. Practicing your busking or something, you know. I was just listening back there. The audio one's now around about 8 million views, but yeah, I can see how they done that sort of first verse because they didn't have the drums and bass in it the first, you know, on the first bit. So maybe my idea would have just worked if all the instruments came in at the start, you know. So yeah, you know what I'm saying and all that. I'm locked out my phone. Wait a minute. I think I'm going to remember the words to this song, which is unusual for me, you know. Usually I don't remember words, but then maybe because words never usually matter, you know, they're just inane or something. I mean, sometimes I do if I like the song or whatever, you know, like, because even like, things like Morrissey, because Morrissey's a poet. He's probably one of the greatest poet to me because I don't listen to poets or whatever, you know. But just some of the best, he's probably the best lyricist ever, you know. And they had the melody that back in the day. Seems to have lost it a bit there. I don't know what's happened, you know. Because when they go into the chorus, Ringo's drums sound like power drums, you know, power rock, which I'm not a big fan of, you know. But I mean, I don't know why that is. Whether the mix is up them or that's the sort of type he uses now or whatever, you know. I don't know. When you hear the backing voices on the song, apart from when Paul's singing, you know, just when they're going, ah, ah, that sort of stuff. That's from old Beatles songs, Eleanor Rigby, and that nice one from the Abbey Road, and another one. Oh yeah, and that instrumental bit, which is round about after the second verse, after the chorus, second chorus. That's Paul that sort of came up with that. That's a brand new bit, you know. And it's really nice. And it's him playing the slide guitar, Paul, and he's, you know, doing it in memory of George. Probably trying to get his style, but as people have said, it doesn't really sound like his style, George's style. I think George was classier at it. And I'm even wondering if George might have went an octave higher, you know. Because I think he did in My Sweet Lord, did he know? I'd need to listen again, but... Paul's just doesn't, I don't know. I mean, slide guitar, you know. But it's nice though, still nice. I think George sometimes, even though he kept a lot of things simple, he sort of came up with a sort of twist that interests me, you know. I was just listening to him in the second verse there, where he came in with his jangly guitar. It was a bit like Chic, I thought, you know, that sort of rhythm, funk even, sort of funk guitar, but in a nice way, you know. Yeah, I'm just listening. That instrumental actually goes on quite a bit, you know, but it's still nice, you know. It's two sort of sections to it. And that second bit, I can hear them going, again. That's from the 60s. Was it the Sun King, the song, Here Comes the Sun King? I don't know if the song's good enough to be sure. Because Giles Martin was pointing out, sadly his mum died on the day of the release of the song as well, which was a tragedy. That was George Martin's wife. Yeah, but he was saying that one of the things Paul was insisting is that we hear George's guitar, you know, because it sort of brings the flow to it, and he's right about that, you know. But I'm just listening to the third verse here and I can hardly hear George again, but so that's a pity. I would have probably had that right up. It's a great ending, you know, the way they ended it, and Paul's got the slide guitar again, yeah. So, yeah, it was really good, and like Love Me Do is the thing, mate. They've used the Ringo Starr version where he's playing the drums, and that's in stereo apparently for the first time ever. Although I could hear the hand clapping on one side, which was annoying. So they must have just kept that in, maybe just for memory's sake or something. I don't know, but yeah, but I don't think the fans are too bothered about that because they could sort of hear it in stereo. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but some guy was saying you could, even though it was in mono, I don't know, I'll forget that. Anyway, that's it really. It's a really nice song. I'm enjoying it again, listening to it. I think it's one that I'll definitely, I mean, I still think about Free as a Bird and Real Love, you know. Because a few years ago, Real Love was used in one of the Christmas adverts. Was it John Lewis or Lily Allen sung it, I think it was. So these sort of songs have really thing me. And to me, like I say, it's possibly John's best work after 75. Well, anyway, I mean, before then he'd done some good ones I can't think of at the moment. I imagine, I suppose. Yeah, that's it, guys. I guess a thumbs up from me. Goodbye. I mean, he went on and on and on and on.